With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome to the Exploring More podcast. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm with my friends Scott, Tom, and SJ, and we are in part 3 of a 5-parter. Is anything else we've done 5 parts? That's a lot.
No, I think 5's the biggest. No, Freedom was 4. We usually
Masculine
do 4.
Journey had
Masculine
probably 6 or
Journey,
7,
yeah,
8.
had 8, 9,
Yeah.
maybe even 10.
We were in the studio for 3 days on that one.
Yeah.
That was
It
good.
was really good, though.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a union for this?
Yes.
We should.
Yeah, you're not qualified yet.
Yeah. How do I vet? How do I get vetted?
After this one,
You got to go through.
We'll give you the
You got to go
paperwork.
through
Okay.
the XFL, AAA series.
Okay.
You know,
Just want
Yeah.
to know.
you got
You've got
another season.
a certain amount of airtime, and you're just about there. So
That's right.
this should take
We'll
you
take
over.
you on, as Andretian would say, we'll take you on your check ride. See if you.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was funny. So we're exploring the ingredients of love, and we are in part 3 in this session, which we're going to talk about worth and how worth is significant to love. When we esteem or place value and worth, what that does to a heart, what that does to something, and how it affects it. I think that's a great part of this conversation, how love affects us, how it impacts us when we're loved, and how the lack of it affects us. We've talked about we're made for it. Father, Son, and Spirit, the Trinity, made us for intimacy, oneness, connectedness with them, to be loved by them, and to experience love with one another. Scott, you've hit this drum a couple times, that it's in receiving, it's in being loved, it's in enjoying our position as the beloved, in which we then can love others. And as God fills our tanks, and as we experience that filling over and over again, and can have the eyes to see and ears to hear the rightful association of anywhere, anytime you're being loved by someone, God's there because God's love. It's His idea, it's His invention, it's who He is, and it's what He's about. And so this is a big, big, big topic.
My introduction to the Father's love in a powerful way was when I became a parent. And I've told my adult kids, you know, I can tell you I love you, and you can think you know what I mean by I love you, and you can think you know what love is. But when you have a child and you feel the responsibility and the love and everything we're talking about, everything that's in that bucket of soup that is love, for me, the most significant awakening moment was to become a parent, and then to become a parent again, and how to love. And I certainly loved the way I was loved by my mom and dad, and that had shortcomings. There was good stuff, there was bad stuff. And so I said, oh God, I'm not going to do the bad, I will do the good. And that was my parenting
Plan.
And then, fortunately, Zoweh and our trips to Colorado and this brotherhood, you know, desires to walk with God intimately and feel the belovedness. And once we felt the belovedness, then we begin to know how to give away belovedness, to extend belovedness, to offer belovedness. That was the trajectory changing inflection point of my life with respect to that kind of love, God's love.
As a father loves his child, and we all have children. You talked about that last session. And I mean, I love your kids. Some of them are my friends, young friends, but it's not the same as my kids. And you men have loved my kids.
Yeah.
Because they're mine, I think, and our association all brings that forward. But when they give you that little one to take home, I mean, when that one comes into the room, that birthing room, if you were privileged to be there, you can't describe it. You just fell in love with this little thing, you know, and it's absolutely true. It has your DNA. It bears your image. Therefore, which person on this planet does the Father not love? My friend Tom's, I love him I love them. Do you see what I'm saying? That there's an association that invites us to love others. But I think when we start to realize that guy in the other car driving and cutting you off, he's loved by God.
Why you got to bring that up?
I know.
I struggle with that.
Or the person, the person in line at the grocery who is behind you but thinks that they can, when the next lane's opened up, they can go over there first ahead of you.
It's the oblivious disease.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've diagnosed it diagnostically.
Yeah.
The oblivious disease. I chalk it up to oblivious disease and try to have grace.
There you go.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities to love is what I'm saying.
There are, yeah.
The drive-through, we're bumping into the image bearers of God all over the place.
Yeah.
This is to be done relationally, and to esteem or to recognize, and this is what we're talking about today, is worth. We hit acceptance and validation as ingredients. Listeners, if you're jumping in on this one, we had so much fun talking about the importance of those things that I'm just going to leave those alone and jump right into worth.
Go back and listen to the first two parts of this series.
Yeah, but this is a consistent theme through this series is there's ingredients of love. You talked about it in session 1, SJ, that if you flip the box around and the package is love, but you look at the ingredients, the essence, the qualities that are in this thing that we call love, that's what we're talking about. Validation, acceptance, worth, belonging, and significance. And today we're going to devote our time to worth. So why is this on the box? Why is this one of the ingredients? What say you? How does this ingredient land for you?
It seems like it's the bedrock of your identity. If we feel worthless, that's going to have a huge impact on our behavior, on how we treat ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we take care of ourselves a lot of times. So I really do believe God wants us to know this. In the first chapter of Ephesians, Paul's writing, and he really is trying to make this point very, very clear. It's in verse 4, he says, in his love, he chose us, actually picked us out for himself as his own in Christ before the foundation of the world. So he picked us out, he chose us, he formed us, he conceived of us, he thought of us from the beginning of the foundations of the world to be set apart for him and blameless in his sight, even above reproach before him in love, because he foreordained and destined us and planned in love for us to be his adopted or revealed as his own children through Jesus Christ, in accordance with the purpose of his will, because it pleased him and was his kind intent.
Yeah, he didn't have
that's some pretty good words over us and about us and about our identity.
Ephesians 1?
Yeah, 1:3 through 5.
Yeah, I love it.
And I love that scripture. When you want to talk about the truth of who are we really, that really says something quite different than most of us have come to believe about ourselves. And we're learning, I think, as we journey with God and as we do develop intimacy and connection and spend time looking for his words and how he sees us, I want to remember that, because the world isn't telling us that typically. They're not going to celebrate us
for who we really are.
Yeah.
They might celebrate us for
but you get in
the car we drive,
or a fellowship or a brotherhood or a community of people who do celebrate the true self, the good heart, the goodness that God is asking us to embrace. Thomas Keating said that once. One of the first things God will do for us when we come into the kingdom is ask us to consent to our basic goodness, to our worth, to our value.
Wow.
Because most of us will say, no, not me.
Right.
I don't have anything.
Yeah.
You're talking about somebody else.
I'm not
Maybe
worth
he was thinking
anything.
of somebody else when he wrote that.
Many of us have followed that belief to its end. That feeling of worthlessness.
Right.
Well, I think everyone follows that feeling, that belief to the point where you're no longer willing to believe that that's true. So either you're going to buy all in and say, I'm totally worthless and this is the end, or there has to be something else out there. There has to be something more than my own understanding and my own belief about my worth and my value. And so then you submit to, God, show me who I truly am.
Or, my story, and some of the listeners may know a little. I never felt worthless. I never allowed myself to feel worthless. And I would show you and I would prove it to you. And I would not allow worthlessness to be in my image construct of self.
But that shows you how much denial you were in. Cause
No, I'm not.
Because we all feel that, and we're trying to prove that it's not true.
That was an agreement that you made after you were made to feel that way, worthless.
They all have their counterparts, validation, acceptance. They have their counterparts in which the enemy wields very, very powerful, sinister assaults against this thing that we long for, to be loved. And I think about to be insulted, it comes right at your worth. You're not worth anything. You're not worth my time. You're not worth my presence. You're not worth my attention. I mean, these are other ways that the enemy can deliver very powerful messages to the image bearers of God and can literally leave a mark on a young heart, on a boy, on a girl. And they either go one of two ways, like Scott did. Well, I'll show you my worth. Or, might be worse, they believe it and they just live in the shadows because the jury's already sentenced them to
less than.
You're not worth. And so this is a powerful, powerful idea of what the Father's love can do.
Yeah.
It does. It brings value and worth. And we talk about this. It's one of my favorite little illustrations, eBay. Mm-hmm. What has eBay taught us? The value of anything is what somebody's willing to pay. And when the Father sends the Son to bring us home through the cross, and thank God for the resurrection, for the life, it's payment. When you hear the word ransom, you know what that means.
Right.
That something was captive and it was paid for and brought out from that captivity into freedom. To be paid for is to bring value to it. And when you look at the value that we had, our worth to the Father was for Him to take the substitution. I got this. I don't want them to pay. They can't pay. I'll pay. And to receive that, to experience, that's just part of it.
Right.
I think there's all kinds of other elements. I don't want our listeners and I don't want us to just say that that's the worth. That's the worth category. That's the file right there. It's a huge file. But there's other ways in which I think the Father wants to love us and show us our worth. I had a friend just the other day I was on the phone with, and it's a missional thing that he's on, like we all are on. And he said, I don't want to do it with my giftedness. And I went, time out. What do you mean? He said, I just don't want to do it out of my own giftedness. I said, well, where do you think you got the gifts? Who do you think deemed you worthy of such gifts? And we've been fans of the Enneagram for a while. Mm-hmm. These 9 types, there's 9 expressions. Mm-hmm. It's just a way to look at this. There's 9 expressions of image bearing and what it looks like to walk well in the image that you bear and your giftedness. No, you're worth something. You bring worth to things, especially when you're on your way as far as your heart being healed from those messages that you're not worth anything. When you start to receive your worth and value, it doesn't make me puff up, Tom. As a matter of fact, it releases me to offer and to share and to learn how to do that. Not every situation needs my skills, talents, and abilities, but to learn even how to wield that or how to withhold that at the proper time or when to offer that at the proper time. Your worth is so much more than just this intrinsic value. That's significant in and of itself. That God has deemed you, put value on you, paid for you. But there's also a worth that you bring into your giftedness, your significance. Those things come into the story.
Yeah, you're talking about your true self.
Yeah.
When you've done the work and gone on the journey, and we all are continuing on that journey, that's one of the things, listeners, you'll hear us say all the time, is that we're still customers. Even though that we're guides and have different roles at the weekends where the men and the women come to hear the message of love, life, and freedom, we're still customers too. God's still speaking to us. We're not done yet. So what Michael's describing is the true self, who you really are and who God has wired you to be. I would say when you puff up, that's not God. That's your false self. Yeah, that's your false self trying to get out of the cage, rattling on the bars. Yeah, I think value is a great word that helps me to get it helps me to get my head around a little bit and further define worth. We were talking about with eBay, the value of a thing, what something's worth. Mm-hmm. But we look at worth as, what we can do oftentimes.
Yes. Oh, yes, it's huge.
And, I can fill this role, I can help this person, I can do this thing. And that's not really your intrinsic value. Now, you may be gifted in that area to be able to help or do something in that way, but what you can do is not what indicates your value to God.
Mm-hmm. And when you get that right, get that straight, then you're free to actually bring your worth and value to the world. And if they frown on it or don't want it, you're not crushed, because love's not on the line. Your value and worth is established by the Father, by the one who made you. As Jesus said, hey, guys, if they don't want what you have, just dust off your sandals. It's okay. It's actually me they're rejecting, not you.
Right. Go on to the next city.
Right. In a couple verses, the same issue is, I'm going to give you something very valuable. I'm going to give you my Spirit. I'm going to give you power and authority. You're going to go and do. And then at the end of that passage, he says, but don't get all jazzed up about that. It's awesome, but I want you to get jazzed because your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Your value and worth is there.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It's that.
It's a combination of everything you guys are saying, and I just jotted this down because I've experienced this and I long to experience this more. When our true self concedes to our real worth to God, and from that place of worth, we offer recognition of worth to someone else. So they recognize the worth of the bestower. And that in and of itself is weighty. That you have worth.
Yeah.
I have worth. You have worth. My worth recognizes your worth. That's big on three parties. It's affirming to me, it's affirming to the recipient, and it's glorifying to the Father.
Win, win, win.
So, yeah, that's right. That's right.
But there were a lot of nuances in that. And one of them was the thing that Tom said, the requirement is going to be that God will ask you to concede to your own goodness. All that other stuff that's in the way, I need you to recognize who I made you to be and who you are to me in my image. And when we can wield that and we can grow other people into that image, the Lord is pleased.
Yeah, yeah. When we come back, we can take a break. We're going to share some stories about how God has esteemed us, has bestowed upon us our value, our worth to Him. We'll be right back.
Hey listeners, SJ here. Just want to clue you in on some of our upcoming events for 2022 and remind you that the purpose of Zoweh events is to create a safe space where men, women, and couples can encounter God, experience Him in wonderfully intimate ways, and enter into life-changing transformation. Our men's weekend, the Heart of a Warrior Encounter, is coming up April 28th through May 1st, 2022 at Rockbridge. We'll be back in the hills of Virginia for the first time in a couple of years. So we encourage you to go to zoweh.org/events for more information. Again, the men's weekend is April 28th through May 1st. Hope to see you guys there.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, where we are diving deep into the ingredient of love known as worth and value. So how has He done that for you? How has the Father brought value and worth to your heart, to your soul? How has He delivered those packages of your worth to Him, and how that has impacted you?
I'll go first. I think I've shared the story before, but 3 years ago now, I was pretty new to the full-time Zoweh team. Michael, you had arranged for an opportunity for some of us to get away and have some time together. And really for us guys that were joining the full-time team anew back then, to share our story with guys that had been around a little while, like you, Tom, and a few of the other guys. So I'm sharing my story, and this opportunity comes up. And the long and the short of it was, I had made an agreement from the time I was probably about 7 years old that my worth and my value was attached to what I could do for people. And in that moment, in the redemptive community moment around these guys, as I was sharing my story, they saw that even when I didn't really see how deep it was in my heart and how deeply I had accepted that my value was directly tied to what I could do for people. I became a firefighter rescue medic, for crying out loud. So, I mean, and it was, I'm looking back now. Yeah, man, thank you for that. But I'm looking back on that saying, I think that's part of the reason that I wanted to do that, was to just arrange for that value and that worth by doing things for people. So it's been that journey of the last few years, and God is still revealing to me ways that might still kind of linger around. It's that situation where if something like that comes up or gets stirred up in me, is that still in me? Well, no, that desire to get your value for doing things for people, that's not still in you, but it wants to get back in. So that was a freeing moment for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great story. I remember that story, and I remember when you were sharing that, and I don't know if it was Tom, you, or me, somebody said, "Are you surprised?"
Yeah.
That we knew that you had a tendency, we could see it. None of us had ever told you that, and none of us had probably even talked about it. But when you said it, it was like we had permission to go, yeah, we see that part of the infection. We see that. It's great to be helpful to people. Thank goodness for the firefighters, for the people that run toward danger. But when their validation and worth is on the line in what they do, that's what we're saying is sinister.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than getting your worth from the Father and bringing that to the fires, that's different.
Right.
And it lands different. It's experienced differently. And you think about that. I know that when I practice that as well, SJ, it's so conditional. So, Tom, I might get you a gift card and I give it to you. It's not an unconditional gift. I actually need you to thank me. I need you to somehow return the love, right? That's not good.
Take you with him to Buffalo Wild Wings.
That's just a silly example. But oh my gosh, when you elevate that my worth is attached to this gift here, now would you please give me something back to, in some way, bring value to what I did? That's something that I think all of us have to graduate from, get free from, and is really, really a critical piece. How about you guys? Any stories?
I just want to share this last little piece before we move on. Being free from that, and thank you so much, because really, Tom, you asked great questions in that time. Michael, you too, all the guys around the circle did. Being free from that, I really have been on this journey of, it's a little unsettling because at first you're not really sure who you are. When you break free from that and take that old shirt off, there's this moment of, okay, I'm missing the comfort of that old shirt. I'm missing that security that it brought me. So it's been a really great few years of really figuring out who I am and where my worth comes from. And I couldn't have done it without being free from that. So thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. That's awesome. Good deal.
I could share from my own story. First of all, an observation of what the fruit of the environment that we live in together and what we've been up to with God for the last 10, 12 years. I've seen countless people come along who didn't feel their worth. Mm. And as we walked together and as we did the work that we do, we are all in the process of working out stuff with God. I have seen so many men and women find their worth, find their place, find something that they didn't even know they had. And it's a theme I see over and over and over again. And even the materials that we produce and we offer so that other groups that aren't geographically located near can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Finding this idea of becoming wholehearted together with other people. But for me, my background story was, when I was young, I was pretty deeply wounded in terms of you say stupid things. I had a few incidents when I was embarrassed. I said something that I hadn't thought through, and it was very young and very vulnerable and very impacting to me. And so as we started doing this, and Michael wanted to do a conference, wanted to start offering some of the ideas that we were embracing and experiencing and finding life in, put me in a position of actually being a speaker at one of these events, which was so horrifyingly scary to me.
Right.
You talk about
of this
fear.
Agreement
You're welcome.
About.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh,
and the journey I've been on with that and how God has validated me in that and has shown me my worth and that I do have something to say to encourage men, and especially in these conferences, has been very life-changing to me. And I can remember the first one I was ever going to do, I was walking down this hill, going down to the auditorium to get mic'd up and prayed over, and I was so nervous and so worried it was going to be horrible. Because, I'm comparing myself to people like Michael who had been speakers for quite a while and some of the other guys that were on the team at the time. And I never forget, God just came over me, came out from inside of me something. But after those men prayed over me, the intercessors, and I went out on that little platform, it was like I was in this bubble of confidence and encouragement and worth and value. And I felt like another person. And I've had to overcome fear, numerous times since then, but less and less. But my point is that God showed me through all of that and through Michael's encouragement and other men that I got my voice back. You have a voice. You have something to say.
Yeah.
And that has been huge in so many areas of my life now, not just in a role like that, but whether it's one-on-one with guys that work for me or on job sites, contractors, all kinds of situations where I can let myself out now, where I was just so hidden and afraid to communicate because I might say something stupid or,
Right. I don't want the listeners to miss those two, Tom, that the wounding message to your heart was you say stupid things.
Right.
And then the path out of there was arranged by a father who wants you to know that's not true. And that if you'll walk with him through the speaking opportunity, I'll show you your value in the kingdom, that you don't say stupid things. As a matter of fact, I've entrusted you with some very important things to say. That is a good story. I just don't want anybody to miss the simplicity and the significance, because I've had bouts. I've done a few heavyweight fights with this thing called shame. Anything that has shamed you, those circumstances and what you walk away from any moment that you feel shame, shame says something's wrong with you. Guilt is you did something wrong. And that's powerful too. But the enemy loves to use shame. Something's wrong with you. Any heart, man or woman, you just kind of cower into the shadows until you find this opportunity as God brings you an opportunity out of those shadows. And it's part of your story, but there's so many other places that I think the sexual challenges that men have, lust and pornography, shame just drives them into the shadows, into isolation, or health issues, financial issues,
all of
addiction issues.
I mean, the enemy wants to stab at our worth and our value in those areas.
And lop off an arm, lop off literally, it's a hatchet job.
Yeah. And what do most guys do? It just makes me think of the Monty Python thing. It's just a flesh wound. I'm fine. Your arm's off, dude.
Yeah.
Or even worse, you're right.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just want to affirm you, Tom, too. I mean, that must have been like walking up to the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
But what bravery and courage to do that. And now you're one of the most adored and enjoyed speakers on the team.
Thank you for that.
The guys love you. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I thought we were going to bring it up a while back, a John Elway story that I'm going to put Scott on the spot. But what we would offer is worth is when you give someone your time, or when you give somebody in that space your attention, when you give someone your eyes, when you give them your ears to listen. Those are very loving things. It gives value. It translates and transmits value. You're valuable to me. You've talked to somebody who's on their phone, texting, or looking at something. How do you feel? Devalued.
Right.
And I think when we think about certain celebrities, we were talking about Denver. We just did Heart of Aware West conference out west, and we were talking about who's the patron son of Colorado, of Denver.
Most famous guy in Colorado,
And it was Scott baiting us. He wanted us to say this. It was John Elway. But if you know Scott's story from the podcast or you've been to the conferences, he had a short stint in the NFL. Well, the team he was with was the Broncos, and the quarterback he was behind with the clipboard and the hat on backwards chart and stuff was a guy named John Elway. So here we are 25 years later. 30 years later, 30 years later, and
35 years later.
And Scott's mom passed away recently, just last month, and this leukemia thing has been hitting you for a while. And through circumstances, interesting circumstances, through business and some other things, a friend is connected to John Elway. John Elway hears about Scott, and what did you get?
I got a 303 area code voicemail. You know, I get robocalls. I get 50 a day, right?
We all do.
303, that's Denver. What? Who in Denver? Let me just check this one out. And I hear, Scott Stankavich, John Elway here. How you doing, brother? And, you know, I was in the middle of losing mom, and that created a sense of worth that somebody of that high level of recognition would remember me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worth to them, that they would take their time to return the call. And he's just a man. You know, I've given talks about MJ, Elway, LT. You know, they're not Jesus Christ. But they did establish a worth in me that I wanted to share and say.
It was fun.
It was fun. It's fun for everybody, not just for me. Hey, look at me. And that brings me to the story I would share. Is that very significant moment in my life was when a Christian businessman, very, very successful, took me out to lunch, and I thought we were going to talk about his office space and the options and how to negotiate the deal. And we didn't talk about any of that. He asked me during that lunch, do I have a life verse? I said, Gene, I don't even know if I have a Bible, let alone a life verse.
Yeah, man.
And I said, do you? Trying to get out of the focus on me. And he eloquently, like Shakespeare, read Psalm 1. I said, wow. And then we changed the subject. But I was convicted. I need a life verse. What is a life verse? And so through reading and the whole nother story how it came, but my life verse is Matthew 5:16, which is the line that says, shine your light so that others may see your good deeds and through them come to know the Father. I read over it and I read by it, and it drew me back. And that is the Lord saying to me, Scott, you have worth. You have good deeds. You have bad deeds too, but you have good deeds. You're recognized. You have a platform. John Elway called you, right? Using those so that people can come to know me, those things of your worth, benefit, glory, and praise and honor to me, Scott, that's pretty important. That's pretty important. So the false humility, well, I don't know. No, I'm not going to be false. I accept that. I appreciate that. I thank you. I received that gift. I'm glad that talk. The Barco days were great. I'm happy to share stories with all of those things. I don't want to be arrogant, but I want to say that's who God set me up to be. And part of his plan for me is those things are to be used for his glory and so that he would be known.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know where I got to go as we land this is, what if the voicemail, what if the call was from the King of Kings? Would you feel the value and worth that you would from a John Elway, from a Michael Jordan, from a celebrity? I want to narrow the distance between that, because I think probably a lot of us would not recognize that number or that call, and we want to change that so that when you are experiencing worth, the Father is bestowing on you value and worth, that it's more than God who created me, who sees me, the Father. It's not like my daughter, well, Dad, you're supposed to do that, or you're supposed to say that.
No, it's this. Hey, Scott Jennings, Jesus Christ here. Just checking on your brother.
Yeah. And by the way, they're making French toast at the dining hall this morning.
With bacon.
Yeah, with bacon.
With bacon, yeah.
Michael and I argue over who that was really for. I think it was me, but
it's the invitation, friends, to consider maybe a new paradigm, a new way of looking at, is there a bishop in your life that's trying to unveil you, that God is saying, I see you, and I want you. You're that valuable to me. Or are you the bishop that God's saying, go show and tell that heart that I see them, that we want them? I mean, this is the way the kingdom works, and that's why worth is a significant, huge part of loving and being loved. And so we want all the listeners to know, and the friends that you have, you may be the UPS guy today, you may be the FedEx guy, you may be the one who leaves a voicemail that God has put on your heart to call somebody and communicate to them their value and their worth. And then at the same time, hey, yeah, you got to sort through the other messages, robocalls, and I don't always answer my phone. I don't, because if you're not trusted, I'm just going to let them leave a voicemail, and then I'll find out who they are. And to trust the presence of God, the voice of God, and the invitation of God to be loved, to be the beloved sons and be the beloved daughters, that's what this conversation's about. And we're going to keep having it. We got a couple more to tackle of these ingredients, but friends, yeah, we want to help. As you said, Tom, we tried to create resources, Heart of a Warrior, some other resources that have come along to invite and communicate that. But the most important thing is for you to experience that. And that's what we're hopeful that these conversations on Exploring More podcast can be, not exceptions, not, yeah, it's true for those guys, but an invitation to be normal and to be your normal, that the God of the universe sees you. He loves what he sees, and he wants to be a part of your life and is inviting you, wooing you through so many circumstances into love, that first he could love you. I'm going to say this doesn't need a censor. Seriously, he's going to love the crap out of you. He wants to get all that stuff that's in the way off.
Yeah.
He wants to love the crap out of you so that
literally
that nothing would be in the way. You would be free. And then he's going to deploy you into the mission, into the kingdom mission of loving others. And that's good news. That's good news.
Amen.
Yeah. Exploring More podcast listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. This is part 3. We got 2 more to go. We've got belonging and significance yet to come. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again, Scott and Tom, for joining awesome. Michael and I. And listeners, if you got questions or comments you want to send to us, exploringmore@zoweh.org is our email address. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a rate or a review on your favorite podcast platform, we sure would appreciate that. We've got tons of free resources on our website. If you go to zoweh.org/store, you'll see the free link there. We've got plenty of stuff for you to check out. And if you haven't checked out earlier episodes of the Exploring More podcast, so we've got lots and lots and lots of stuff for you to listen to that talks about your heart, talks about your identity,
the kingdom,
absolutely. So check all that out. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.